These are remarkable times.
I want to really hear from you, and I want to hear your questions.
I'll tell you what my leadership style is.
It's important for ordinary Americans to have their, have their say and to actually, get their voices heard.
Never wear white before Memorial Day.
Never wear white after Labor Day.
Never wear white.
All right, so everybody show me their tap dancer ready position.
I just want to thank all of you for tuning in, for supporting 92nd Street Y. It's an amazing institution that is really, I think, one of the foundations of what I call the soul of New York.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Seth Pinsky and I'm the CEO of the 92nd Street Y. Thank you for joining us. We are so happy to be here with all of you. Over the course of the next hour, we will be bringing you some unforgettable performances by trailblazing dance companies, musicians, visual artists, thought leaders, and authors. But first, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the most important people in my life. My wife Angela, my son Theo, and my daughter Amelia. We are really grateful to be a part of the 92Y family. Navigating the current crisis, I have had a chance to ponder how the 92nd Street Y has survived for the past 146 years. Surely, one of the primary reasons is the leadership and guidance of our board. Their dedication to our institution is palpable, and I thank every one of them, especially our chairman, Lawrence Belfer, a leader who is thoughtful, visionary, and generous. To many of us, these last few weeks have felt highly disorienting. As a result, much that we once viewed as essential now seems of little consequence. Instead, we have come to value what really matters in life, the simple gifts that the 92nd Street Y has prioritized since its founding in 1874. The simple gift of our Jewish values, the simple gift of healthy bodies, the simple gift of family and loved ones, the simple gift of education and self-improvement, the simple gift of community, and the simple gift of generosity. Thank you to all of you for your continuing encouragement, for your continuing support, and yes, for your continuing generosity. And now, it is my pleasure to present the artists of Doran's Dance in an exclusive digital premiere that will illustrate that even in the virtual world, we create beauty when we dance together.
House to half, go. House out, go. Q1, go.
Hi, I'm Mary Milstein-Pallavi, a board member at 92Y.
And I'm Allison Valcuse, director of 92Y's Art Center.
We are excited to introduce our next guest, the visual artist Chantel Martin. Chantel bridges fine art, performance art, and technology in a meditation of lines with its own characters, creatures, and messages. She invites us to embrace the freedom to discover and express who we are, and she is a source of inspiration for so many. I'm also happy to call her a dear friend, and though we can't be together right now, I have her new book, Lines, keeping me company during quarantine.
Chantel has a close connection to 92Y, and we're honored to have her in our family. She was our first ever artist in residence exhibiting and performing at 92Y, and she's been an incredible partner with us in our educational outreach programs in public schools.
92Y believes that all children should have access to high-quality arts education. And that's why it's one of the biggest provider of the arts in New York City public schools.
Here at 92Y, we're dedicated to being a nurturing home for the arts and artists for generations to come.
And now, please welcome the incredible Chantel Martin.
I'm Chantel Martin, I'm an artist, and I'm so honored to be here with you. It's been a pleasure becoming a part of the 92Y community over the last few years, and they've given me this time to be inspired by a recording of a reading by Maya Angelou. And this recording's from 1971, but it's so absolutely still current. And what I love about this recording and this reading is not only Maya Angelou's incredible voice, but the exploration and the explanation she gives of poetry becomes poetry in and of itself. Please enjoy.
I'm told that poetry is obliged to be mystical, magical, musical, and lyrical. And I believe that the great poetry in the United States is the poetry that came out of and still comes out of the Black experience. I believe that a people live in direct relationship to the heroes they have, whether they are tangible heroes, heroes of blood and bone and muscle and so forth, or whether they are heroes like the heroes of poetry and music. There's a line in a spiritual which to me is music and to me is poetry. It says, "Green trees are bending, poor sinner stands a trembling." Now that to me is poetry. It doesn't go about the business of saying, now you see the trees were being swayed because the wind was blowing from the northeast, and then somebody was standing and their knees were knocking and he hadn't done the right thing and so he was kind of scared. It said, "Green trees are bending, poor sinner stands a trembling." That's poetry.
Good evening. I'm Constance Littman, a 92Y board member. I truly love the 92nd Street Y. It has meant so much to me and to my whole family. To inspire us tonight throughout the program, we will feature 3 distinguished writers. Each has chosen to read a poem that has been meaningful to them during this time. Coming up later in the evening, we will hear from Billy Collins and Nicole Krauss. But first, please welcome Booker Prize winner, author, Sir Salman Rushdie.
Hello, I'm Salman Rushdie, and I'm first of all like to offer my love and solidarity to the 92nd Street Y, which all of us in the world of books and the arts need so much, and we hope you will come through this. Let's hope we all come through this. And I'm going to read today a poem by the great Polish poet Adam Zagajewski called Try to Praise the Mutilated World, which actually appeared in the issue of the New Yorker that came out 1 week after the 9/11 attack. And even though the poem was written a year or so before that attack, it became rapidly established as one of the most beautiful artistic responses to that tragedy. And I thought, here we are in another different kind of crisis, but that the poem seems to have something to say now as well. So this is Try to Praise the Mutilated World by Adam Zagajewski, translated by Claire Kavanagh. Try to praise the mutilated world. Remember June's long days and wild strawberries, drops of rosé wine, the nettles that methodically overgrow the abandoned homesteads of exiles. You must praise the mutilated world. You watched the stylish yachts and ships. One of them had a long trip ahead of it, while salty oblivion awaited others. You've seen the refugees going nowhere. You've heard the executioners sing joyfully. You should praise the mutilated world. Remember the moments when we were together in a white room and the curtain fluttered. Return in thought to the concert where music flared. You gathered acorns in the park in autumn, and leaves eddied over the earth's scars. Praise the mutilated world, and the grey feather a thrush lost, and the gentle light that strays and vanishes and returns.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Minikis. I have been on the board of the 92nd Street Y for many years now. I'm so delighted that I found my home in the Brofman Center for Jewish Life with Rabbi Rubenstein. I love Peter. I'm so grateful for what he has done for me and for elevating Jewish teaching at the Y. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Peter Rubenstein.
And now, with tremendous gratitude to him, it is my great pleasure to introduce a great friend, the executive chair of the institute that carries his name, and the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Mr. Tony Blair.
Thanks, Peter.
And in a recent briefing that you gave, I heard you talk about the developing world, especially Africa, and you strongly implied that nations, including the United States, needs to recognize that helping countries like that really is helping ourselves. Can you explain that and why, especially at this time of increasing nationalism? when countries don't seem to be caring about others? Why especially Africa?
So it's an important question right now because everyone's concerned with their own country, with protecting their own people, looking after them, trying to find a way out of this wretched pandemic and its economic and social and health consequences. So the reason why it's important to spare a thought for Africa and the developing world is obviously partly because it's important to care for people, even if they're not your own nationality. But secondly, because there's a really good reason of enlightened self-interest. Essentially, this is a global pandemic. In the end, we need all countries to get on top of it, to know exactly what has happened to the disease in their country. And unless you want to end up with some countries being effectively internationally isolated, you've got to make sure that even the poorest parts of the world are able to manage this disease and deal with it. And that's in our collective international interest, if you like. So there's reasons of morality and reasons of self-interest for making sure that we spare a thought for Africa and the developing world.
It's very interesting. Along those lines, you also said that in the future you think there needs to be a redrawing of global architecture around healthcare. What exactly does that mean, and does that fit into the same scheme that you just outlined?
Yes, it does. Look, there's a whole lot of debate going on about the World Health Organization and its response and so on. Personally, I think right now, when we're in the eye of the storm, the important thing is to give them any help that they need. But this may be unfamiliar with some of the audience, but if you use a kind of football analogy from the UK, this is, it's not a criticism to say that the scale of the pandemic is just, is so much larger than anything they were prepared for. So it's a bit like expecting a League Two team in England to go and win the Champions League. They're not going to be able to do it. Now, within the capabilities and structures that they have, I can tell you from my interactions with them, they're doing everything they can, and in particular to support countries in Africa and elsewhere in the developing world. But I think if you're going forward, you need to recast the global architecture around health, around other things too, but around health so that, for example, we are able to accelerate our ability to find vaccines and therapeutics for any such pandemic. The Gavi Alliance, which is the global alliance for vaccines, they've done immensely good work, but we need to make sure that they're properly funded. We need to make sure, for example, that where there are other technologies that are helpful, we're sharing them. We need to make sure that we have enough exchange of data so that we produce a much faster response to the pandemics. And frankly, we need to make sure that some of the healthcare systems in the developing world, I mean, actually in the developed world too, but especially in the developing world, are ready to cope with this type of crisis. And all of that requires international cooperation as well as countries doing the best they can for their own people.
And do you think that this pandemic has brought about an awareness of the need to work together, and countries would be prepared to enact that kind of global outreach and cooperation?
It's a good question and a difficult one. Look, in my view, they should be prepared to do that. It's pretty obvious this is a global pandemic. It's pretty obvious whatever disagreements you have in the international community, everyone has a common interest in dealing with this and getting on top of it. It's pretty obvious that everyone has a common interest in reflating the world economy. Whether that's what will come out of all of this politically, I don't know. I think and hope it will, but there will obviously be, elements on the right who want to go to economic nationalism, protectionism, elements on the left who just want to see this as a ramp for more state power, but a general sense that whatever conflicts, disagreements, confrontations, competitions we have, there's got to be some space for cooperation. I think that would be a sensible outcome. Whether it is the outcome, time will tell.
Tony, as long as I've known you, I've always thought of you as one of the great and clearest visionaries in the world. And I'm just wondering, and certainly one of the most hopeful statespeople in the world, are you still hopeful and optimistic? And in what ways do you think this post-pandemic world is going to be different? Is there going to be more empathy, more interdependence? And attached with that is the question is, what is the role of all of us, individuals, in making it happen?
I think it's really difficult to judge how people feel when they emerge from the tunnel of the pandemic and go back out into what was a familiar landscape and find a lot of it has changed. I mean, I'm really, really anxious about the economic wreckage of the pandemic. In the UK, certainly, I'm sure it's the same in the USA. We've got enormous numbers of people who are effectively unemployed. The government can look after them temporarily, but some of them will be, frankly, permanently unemployed. There will be industries that were viable 4 or 5 months ago and simply aren't viable today. You look at some of the hospitality, travel industries, bricks and mortar retail. So there's going to be such an amount of change that I think it's going to require a lot of fast-sighted leadership and indeed the exercise of statesmanship as well to see how we make sense of this together, because it will be helping people manage this new landscape, navigate their way around it, find their right place in it, get educated or skilled to work differently. You know, this is everything will change. Now, you know, we all, in some ways, we hope to go back to normal, but I think you've got to be very, very blunt about it. And my institute's doing a lot of work in this at the moment. It's a completely new normal. You'll have to live with this disease. It'll be living with the disease. It would be more akin, say, to post 9/11 and how we looked at security. And post 9/11, we looked at security differently. We built a different infrastructure. We altered our own individual habits. This will be the same, except much more so.
Yeah, and the implication of that is that so much depends upon the quality and vision and desire of leaders to unify whatever countries they're leading.
Yeah, and the important thing is to make practical evidence-based decisions. So I can imagine my own country, again, I think the USA, but I would suspect most countries around the world will be thinking, look, if this global pandemic's happened, it's probably not the last time. Even if we get a vaccine or a therapeutic to deal with this one, we may get another one. So, for example, they will be wanting certain capabilities to be able to be produced in country. So people don't want to go in this. I mean, I've been involved helping the African countries in this scrabble for protective equipment, masks, ventilators, testing. You know, a lot of countries will say, no, I'm going to have my own capabilities for these things. I don't want to be reliant on that type of easily disrupted and competitive supply chain, again, for necessity products. So there will be a certain amount of that, and you can perfectly understand it. But we shouldn't forget that if you leave aside this pandemic and you go back to the arc of human history over the last half century, basically, as the world has opened up, it's become more prosperous. As technology's developed, we've been able to communicate much more with each other. And, you know, although this has shown us the perils of interdependence and globalization, which is absolutely correct, because the more people travel, for example, the more this disease can spread. Nonetheless, let's set aside all the fantastic benefits that the ability to travel freely, to experience new cultures, to work across the world has brought us. So we're gonna have to rebuild in this new landscape, but we should do it, I think, cognizant of the fact that we're much better trying to do it with some spirit of cooperation between us.
You know, there's a Yiddish expression that translates from your lips to God's ears. I hope that you have a role in holding out that message and that vision for this entire world. Tony, I'm going to give you an opportunity that I actually never give to anybody except fellow clergy. So I'm going to ask you to allow yourself to give a 1 to 2 minute sermon to all those people who are hearing this conversation. You don't have to start with dear friends, just what is your sermon?
It's not often, it's an unwise thing to ask a politician to give a sermon.
Well, it's only unwise. It's only unwise when they take off their watch.
Look, I think the most important thing is people to realize that when something of this magnitude hits our world and hits it together, it shows us that whatever our differences, there is a need to come together, to work together, to see what we can do for each other. And what this shock to our entire system will offer us is a way of building a future, and let's build a better one. Let's make sure that some of the things that we knew that were there before the pandemic, and we can see probably more vivid relief after the pandemic, some of the injustices and inequities, some of the inequalities there are. Let's think about constructive ways that each of us can help make that world better, can repair it in a better way, build a better future for our children and for our grandchildren. That is what I would like to see us, that's the spirit with which I would like to see us approach the crisis and the aftermath. In every crisis can come an opportunity, and this is our opportunity.
To which I think we should all say, amen, may it be so. Tony, I am so grateful and appreciative of your being with us today. You are, as always, a visionary and a great leader. And I just wish you so much fortune and success as you go forward. And much love to your family as well. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Matthew Bronfman, and I'm on the board of the 92nd Street Y, and I have the privilege of chairing the Bronfman Center for Jewish Life. By you joining us tonight, you're all making a huge contribution to Jewish life. I want to particularly thank Rabbi Rubenstein and Tony Blair for leading this amazing conversation on what the world is going to do in reaction to the coronavirus. The 92nd Street Y is proud to connect communities all over the world. We think of ourselves as being both local and global, and by you joining us tonight, you are helping to prove that. The 92nd Street Y is based on Jewish values, and Jewish values are about tikkun olam and helping repair the world. And this is a time when we really need to repair the world. The work of the Y has been and always will be essential. In this time of crisis, it's even more so. We really appreciate your support and hope that you can also help support the Y through a financial contribution by going on the link below. Gifts of any size make a difference. It is my privilege to have been supporting the Y for over 3 decades, and your support tonight is really critical to help us continue the work for the next 3 decades and more. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Taryn Kashok-Russell, the director of the Harkness Dance Center at the 92nd Street Y. Thank you for joining us this evening. The 92nd Street Y is a historic home for modern dance. Martha Graham and Alvin Ailey found space to create, innovate, and push our art form forward. It is also the home of DEL, the Dance Education Laboratory. DEL was founded at 92Y by Jody Gartfried Arnold 25 years ago, with the dream of providing dance for every child in every school. So much has been done in pursuit of that dream. We are so grateful to Jody for everything that she has done for dancers, dance educators, and everyone who loves and appreciates dance. Following the incredible performance earlier in this show, please enjoy this next piece with Michelle Dorrance and Aaron Marcellus from the company, who will be joined by Robbie Fairchild, former New York City Ballet principal dancer, who has dazzled both the ballet and the Broadway worlds.
I know you belong to somebody new, but tonight you belong to me. Although we're apart, you're a part of my heart, but tonight you belong to me. Way down by the stream, How sweet it would seem once more just to dream in the moonlight. My honey, I know with the dawn that you will be gone, but tonight you belong to me. I'm in the mood for love, simply because you're near me. It's funny, but when you're near me, I'm in the mood for love. Heaven is in your eyes, bright as the stars we're under. Amazing any wonder that I'm in the mood for love. Why stop and think of whether this little dream may fade? We put our hearts together, now we are one. We're not afraid if there's a cloud above. If it should rain, we'll let it. For tonight, forget it. I'm in the mood for love. I'm in the mood for love. We're in the mood for. I know we belong to simply because you're near me. But tonight you belong to me. I'm in the mood for love. Oh, heaven's in your heart. You're bright as the stars of my heart. But tonight you belong to me. I'm in the mood for love. Why stop to think of whether this little dream may fade? We put our hearts together, now we are one. We're not afraid. I know you belong to somebody new, but for tonight, forget it. I'm in the mood for, and I'm in the mood for. We're in the mood for love.
My name is Ava Lehrer, and I'm the director of the 92nd Street Y's Center for Arts, Learning, and Leadership. The Center for Arts, Learning, and Leadership creates educational programs in the arts for students at New York City public schools in all 5 boroughs. One of my favorite educational programs here at the 92nd Street Y is the Christopher Lightfoot Walker Literature Project. This program connects New York City public high school students with celebrated authors from around the world. These authors have included Salman Rushdie, Roxane Gay, Zadie Smith, and Nicole Krauss, who's here with us this evening. Nicole has chosen to read 2 poems by the Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai. Please welcome Nicole Krauss.
I'm Nicole Krauss, and I'm going to read you 2 poems by the Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai. A Quiet Joy. I'm standing in a place where I once loved. The rain is falling. The rain is my home. I think words of longing, a landscape out to the very edge of what's possible. I remember you waving your hand as if wiping mist from the window pane, and your face as if enlarged from an old blurred photo. Once I committed a terrible wrong to myself and others, but the world is beautifully made for doing good and for resting like a park bench. And late in life I discovered a quiet joy, like a serious disease that's discovered too late. Just a little time left now for quiet joy. I walked past a house where I lived once. A man and a woman are still together in the whispers there. Many years have passed with the quiet hum of the staircase bulb going on and off and on again. The keyholes are like little wounds where all the blood seeped out, and inside people pale as death. I want to stand once again as I did, holding my first love all night long in the doorway. When we left at dawn, the house began to fall apart, and since then the city, and since then the whole world. I want to be filled with longing again, till dark burn marks shone my skin. I want to be written again in the book of life, to be written every single day, till the writing hand hurts.
Good evening. I'm Hannah Arya Geifman, Director of the Tisch Center for the Arts at 92nd Street Y. We're often together in Kaufman Concert Hall, listening to the extraordinary artists that make our institution the destination it is. The music that excites me most is when visionary artists make us hear that music in a completely new way. It's something 92Y does boldly and with complete commitment. And it's the hallmark of our next performance. The chamber ensemble, The Knights from Brooklyn, have been championed by artists like Yo-Yo Ma and Gil Shaham. I fell in love with The Knights because they defy boundaries, they push forward, and they are not afraid to break rules. I'm thrilled to share that in the season 2021-2022, The Knights will be the orchestra in residence at 92nd Street Y, and I'm honored to introduce them right now.
Hello everyone at the 92nd Street Y. My name is Eric Jacobson. This is my brother Colin. They tell you not to go into business or real estate with family. Right now I feel so lucky to be in our house together in Brooklyn making music as a family.
And in fact, from the beginning, it was a sense of family alongside the music we love that motivated us to start the nights. In both cases, deep listening, imagination, and a searching spirit are necessary to keep things moving forward.
You just heard Bernstein's Candide Overture. Later you'll hear Simple Gifts, an incredible tune made famous by Copland, but arranged by Colin for this event today to represent this beautiful new relationship between the Knights and the 92nd Street Y. And what it shows, because we're all recording from our houses, from our living rooms, from our studio apartments, that people must create music now. And it gives me chills to think that when this is over, it'll be a new spring for cultural arts. We are going to flock to the 92nd Street Y to see all the incredible offerings.
And we believe that with this amazing new partnership with the Y, that we will be part of the collective healing that New York and the world so needs right now.
Cheers from the Knights.
Hello, this is Billy Collins, and I'm very happy to be invited to this virtual event. I'm going to read two poems by a celebrated poet and a very prominent guest of the Y, and that is Howard Nemeroff. And then I'm going to slip in three very tiny poems by me, and I mean tiny. The first poem of Howard Nemeroff's is he takes off with the idea, not the idea, but the fact that Flaubert said, I think after he wrote Madame Bovary, that he wanted to write a book, a novel, de rien, about nothing. And he takes off from there and his classically ironic style. So this is the poem by Howard Nemeroff called Style. Flaubert wanted to write a novel about nothing. It was to have no subject and be sustained upon style alone, like the Holy Ghost cruising over an abyss, or like the little animals in Disney cartoons who stand upon a branch that breaks but do not fall till they look down. He never wrote that novel, and neither did he write another one that would have been called La Spirale, wherein the hero's fortunes were to rise in dreams while his waking life disintegrated. Even so, for those two books, we thank the Master. They can be read with difficulty in the spirit alone, are not so wholly lost as certain works burned at Alexandria, flooded at Florence, and are never taught in universities. Moreover, they are not deformed by style, that fire that eats what it illuminates. And the next poem by him is a favorite of mine, a very short poem, and the title is Because You Asked About the Line Between Prose and Poetry. Sparrows were feeding in a freezing drizzle that while you watched turned into pieces of snow, riding a gradient invisible from silver slant to random white and slow. There came a moment that you could not tell, and then they clearly flew instead of fell. So prose and poetry are both composed of the same thing, language. Snow and rain are both composed of water, but in his view, poetry flies and prose falls. Now, when I say tiny, three very tiny poems by me, and one is called Waiting. Dead quiet night, I lie in bed waiting for the other pin to drop. Very important title here. Divorce. No more heavy ball, just the sound of the dragged chain with every other step. And finally, another important title, Bad Hotel. I told the woman from housekeeping, who was eager to do up my room, to just come in and pretend I'm not here, which is exactly what I had been doing ever since I checked in. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lawrence Belfer, and I have the privilege of serving as chairman of the 92nd Street Y. On behalf of the whole 92Y community, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you know, what you're witnessing doesn't just happen by itself. So thank you to the artists, poets, writers, speakers, dancers, and musicians who all performed so beautifully. Many thanks to our co-hosts who brought us all together, and quite frankly, this event would not have happened without them. And a special thanks to our board of directors and our extraordinary 92Y professionals who have rallied not only tonight, but also throughout this difficult period we're currently experiencing. I'm so proud to support this institution, and I hope if you've been touched this evening, you will be inspired to do the same in our real time of need. Now, one of the themes of this evening in these complicated times is actually the simple gifts. And among those gifts are community, friendship, and generosity, all of which I think we experienced tonight. These are the gifts that sustain us and will ensure the future of this magical, vital, transformative place called the 92nd Street Y. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our final performance. Here are the Knights playing Simple Gifts. Thank you all again and enjoy.
Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to calm down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we will not be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round.